Welcome to the BLTnT Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTnT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. Well, welcome to another episode of the BLTnT Podcast. For the first time, we have in our studio Mr. Paul Glantz.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So this guest turned $125,000 of debt originally into a luxury cinema empire. And I would say he did it quietly, did it boldly, but never getting too comfortable either.
It's the best 30-year overnight success story you'll ever see.
Well, welcome. We're going to talk a lot about the trials and tribulations, but certainly the risk-taking and the other elements that have gone into what you have become today.
Well, there's been a lot of water under the bridge over the years, but still swimming, so that's a good thing, right?
Great. Yep. For those of you who don't know, Paul is I'm going to have to read some of this because Paul is the co-founder and chairman of Emagine Entertainment, which is one of the nation's most respected, forward-thinking movie theater chains. I think you told me 10th largest privately owned group?
10th largest exhibitor in North America.
Exhibitor, regardless of ownership.
Right.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So they're headquartered here in Troy, Michigan, operating how many theaters now?
We operate 28 theaters, 16 of which I'm personally responsible for, and we have another 12 that are licensees of Emagine.
Great. So, and how many states?
We're in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and our licensee is largely in Minnesota.
Great. So, also you've been a kind of a pioneer in the biggest and best in terms of biggest screens. What was it, that Dolby Atmos? Were you the first, one of the first to
We were
bring
very
that in?
early adopters of Dolby Atmos, which is an immersive sound system, as many as 72 channels of sound. And little known as we were the first in the world to convert to all digital projection.
So pioneering the way.
Yeah, well, technology, I think, is really a common element of businesses that have succeeded over time. And we've oftentimes been on the bleeding edge, but it's served us well.
Good. Well, let's kind of kick off now that everybody knows who we are. Paul's also a good friend of mine, was one of our early customers in this company, and with a very trust-forward attitude, I would say. So I really appreciated the faith that you put in us early on. So thank you for that, and thank you for your friendship.
Of course.
You were the first boat ride for my boys, first movie experience for my boys. So you've been an impact to the family as well.
Oh, good. So we've got first there as well.
That's right. Although they've been a little bit extra spoiled because the first movie my boys ever went to was a grand opening with a dance floor, a piano, free food of all kinds. I think a magician, so they didn't just think it was reclining seats. They thought it was the like a full circus type of production. So they've never really experienced that same level since.
Oh, well, we'll try to replicate that again. We'll try to open some more theaters.
There you go. Perfect. We can't spoil them too much, but speaking about family, let's talk about family. Let's talk about upbringing for you, because I think a lot of people are interested in learning kind of where you came from and what some of those foundational blocks have been for you.
Yeah, well, I came from pretty modest roots. My mom worked before most moms worked outside the home. I had a mom who was very industrious, and she worked outside the home, the afternoon shift. My dad worked as a truck driver, drove a Transamex truck, and we lived a very middle-class existence, with both of them contributing to the household income. Grew up in a 950 square foot bungalow. and I was an only child, and of course remain an only child.
Okay.
And I recommend it highly. It was a good gig, but it was a good gig because I've got lots of cousins, and I grew up very close to them as well. And when it came time to go to college, honestly, I did not know that I had a choice but to pursue higher education. From the time I could remember, little Paulie was going to go to college. And of course, when I graduated from high school, we didn't have a trust fund set aside for me to go to college.
Mhm.
But I got this lovely letter the summer I graduated from high school from Wayne State University offering me a full paid scholarship. And they didn't have to ask twice. Like, okay, I'm in.
Perfect.
And it was not certainly not based on my athletic prowess, because I have none, but I'd gotten good grades in high school. And it was a saving grace because I wasn't exactly a model citizen in high school. But for some reason, school came pretty easily to me. And it was a saving grace because I think my father would have killed me otherwise, and it would have been justifiable homicide.
But what made you think you didn't have a choice?
It was just my upbringing. Neither of my folks had graduated from college. My dad went to Henry Ford Trade School. My mom had several years in at Wayne State, but didn't get a bachelor's degree. But I was brought up with the perception that there were no other options, that you didn't just go to work at the Ford plant when you graduated from high school. You went to college, or at least that was going to be my future. And so I really genuinely did not know that I had an option but to go to college.
So you never argued it then?
No, never argued. It was like, this is how it's going to work. Okay.
That worked out okay.
It did.
And it certainly has worked out well for Wayne State, because I know you've given back quite well to them and have been quite the proponent of them and their growth over the years.
Yeah, they helped us. And my wife, Mary, too, was a scholarship recipient. Was then known as the Merit Scholarship to the Presidential Scholarship. Both of us enjoyed free college education from Wayne State. And so we've endeavored to give back since. And so, among other things, we've created an endowed scholarship for students that are studying accounting. And when we're dead, both of us are gone. There will be over $1 million to fund those scholarships in perpetuity.
Great. Let me understand this, the piece about your mother, the difference in your household versus other households where mom worked, and you said that was at a time when that was not traditionally the typical household.
Yeah, in the 1960s, it was not typical, 60s and 70s. And, it was a great experience for me. And I'll tell you why. I went to spend afternoons with folks across the street who would look after me until my dad got home. And it was a fascinating experience for a kid to be residing in a household part-time where he was both valued by the mom and dad because he represented an income stream for the household, but resented terribly by the children who actually were the offspring of the people who resided there. And George and Virginia thought I was a terrific kid, and again, maybe it was because my mom wrote him a check every week, but it was a tale of two cities, and it was a fascinating contrast for a kid. And let me tell you why. George had grown up as the son of a Serbian immigrant, just like my mom was the daughter of a Serbian immigrant. But for some reason, my grandfather, Mitar, knew love. And he loved his 9 children. And so in turn, they learned how to demonstrate love. And in contrast, in George's family, all they knew was subsistence, like just survival.
Mm-hmm.
And George's dad ended up in the Upper Peninsula as a copper miner. And when George turned 16, the tale goes that his dad said, "Come on, now you're going to the mine." And George worked one day in the mine, and he escaped, basically ran away to Detroit, where he worked at the Dodge main plant in Hamtramck. And for some reason, and this is the tale of the two families, George never learned love from his father.
Mm.
And so George, unfortunately, told his children that they were good for nothing, they never amount to anything, and they were worthless.
In those words?
Literally in those words. And I'm exposed to this, observing this.
While you're coming from this loving family across the street, staying over there to be babysat, essentially.
Yeah. And while they're doting over me because I'm a source of revenue for them, George is basically perpetrating mental abuse on his kids. Well, guess what? It turned out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy because each of George's 4 children ended up spending time in a Michigan penitentiary.
Whoa.
And fortunately, I've not, ended up in that straits yet, but yet being the operative term. But
I've seen you drive, so
it's inevitable.
It could happen.
Yeah, I get it.
Wow.
So, what I think being exposed to lots of different things in your life, and things that were quite adverse. To think about, you're in a household where these other kids all resent you because they don't tell me I'm worthless, right?
Yeah.
It was really a great experience to be thrust into that as a child.
Yeah, almost to see how others. I mean, you were otherwise you would have never seen how other people, have adversity even, but then also how do they even deal with it?
Absolutely. And so when I do public speaking, I oftentimes start out by saying the reason I'm here today is because I was loved as a child.
Wow.
And I was loved as a child by my folks, and they instilled in me self-confidence and a belief that I could achieve anything I aspired to in life.
Wow.
I think they'd be proud of me today.
I would think so. And you've done the same with Jack and Jim. I mean, with your boys.
Hope so. Yeah, they're on their way. They're bright guys, and we love them dearly, of course.
I mean, they know that part, right?
They certainly know that part. That. If they don't, I failed miserably.
And you're married.
Yes.
To Mary.
In fact, on June 1st, it'll be 40 years.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
If you make it.
To make it to next Sunday.
She doesn't take you out before.
Yeah, if I make it till this Sunday, it'll be 40 years.
Great. What's that quote? I don't know. It says something about your success in life is also majorly determined by the spouse that you choose.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. I don't know that saying per se, but a supportive wife, I think, is critically important to anybody who's successful in business.
And you've had that all along?
I have.
Did Mary work at a time as well?
Yeah, Mary has an MBA from Michigan State. She worked in real estate and leasing. She was very successful in her own career. And then when our boys came along, she continued to work. We had a nanny for a while, and Sherry was a wonderful nanny. She loved our kids as much as we did. And we're still friends with Sherry today, some 25, 30 years later. But when the boys got to be a certain age, Mary thought that the most important role in her life was to look after these children. And so she chose to become a home educator. And so our boys were both home educated all the way through high school.
Mm.
And, people look at me and go, well, were they properly socialized? Actually, they had lots of different friends from the homeschooling community. And I could never fire Mary as the principal of the school because Jack turned out to be a national merit finalist, and Jim was admitted to the University of Michigan. So apparently we didn't fail them in their primary and secondary education.
That's great. That's great. When we've talked over the years, it's work and life blend very, very symbiotically for you, right? You're kind of never not working.
I work a lot.
But you're never kind of not living the family life either.
True.
Can you talk about, how you've made that work out?
Well, I like to believe that my kids know that they were loved and that I would make time for them and so forth. But I have a strong work ethic and a propensity to work. So I might come home, have dinner, see the kids, play with them, put them to bed, and then go back to the office. And what most people don't know about me, Matt, you do, but up until 8 years ago, I had a day job. And so I was building my entrepreneurial business. I called it my avocation while I had a full-time gig. And that was my vocation as an insurance peddler.
Yeah, that's always been kind of a wild thing for people to realize, right? You were actually the president or CEO, I believe, of Proctor Financial. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's not a half-time job.
No, it was a lot of responsibility. In fact, when I departed, we had over 300 teammates. And there was a time when the government was trying to put us out of business. And so Mr. Glantz goes to Washington to try to save those 325 jobs. It was all-encompassing at times. There's no question about that. But I've always found time to smell the roses and to be a father and a family man and so forth.
You never seem to be rushed, is kind of what I've always noticed. Is you're very present, even though, even when you were when you had the two jobs, right? You never appear to be rushed. There's always a calm to you.
Well, that's good, because I think folks respond better to calm leadership than they do to folks who are frenetic, like our current president, for example. And by the way, I voted for him, so blame me.
Well, there's no politics allowed here today.
That's fine.
That was actually one of your rules. I actually asked you for some advice.
Well, it is a bad idea for me to talk about politics.
You've been in trouble before there. When I think it's probably been 10 years or so since we've known each other, or thereabout, maybe more. And you were running the other organization. You had built a pretty substantial organization in Emagine as well, even at that time.
My hobby was out of control, wasn't it?
It was a little, it was a little. People are going to have an intervention for you there eventually, but how did you pull together that initial team to be able to trust them while essentially during waking hours you're doing something else, and they were helping you build Emagine?
I've never considered myself to have a lot of operating prowess per se. So I've largely surrounded myself with folks who do know how to operate and execute on a day-to-day basis. But maybe what gave me comfort is because of my background as a CPA, I've always understood the numbers. And so I could see where the business was going without physically being there all the time. And now, of course, we have cameras everywhere, so I could tune in and watch what's going on in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, or Batavia, Illinois, from Troy, Michigan, if I'm so inclined.
Sure.
But you make a good point. It's always been about trying to surround myself with people who have complementary skills and people who can excel where I don't necessarily have strength.
What's been the attitude? I explain to people that your attitude this way, and I could be totally off base with this, but is that you kind of give almost everybody an opportunity that you trust first. Go ahead and screw me, right? You kind of only have one chance to screw you, type of attitude, and that has served you really well, right? In terms of that trust first.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been taken advantage of, once and again. But the reality is that most people that are good want to be given the authority that goes out along with their responsibility. And I'm a terrible micromanager. I have an inclination to say, here are your responsibilities, here are your tasks, make it happen. And I think people who are smart and people who are driven gravitate to that type of leadership. Mm-hmm. And so I've tried to, I guess the term would be, I've tried to work hand in glove with those kind of folks to ensure that other parts of the business operate effectively.
How do you know, like, what's the trigger point for you to know if somebody is one of those people or is not, right? Because we've all made mistakes in hiring. Right.
Yes,
where we go, oh, I guess I thought that was the right person and it's not, or thought this was the right role for that person and it's not. What are some of the triggers that you know, and how do you know quickly? This episode of the BLTnT Podcast is sponsored by Auxiom, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. Empowered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.
It's the numbers, and I'm a big believer that each of us is responsible for creating value greater than our own cost.
Mm-hmm.
And folks could
Are you the
say,
person I stole that from?
I hope so.
Yeah, I've been saying that a lot.
Yeah, and because the reality is that if you're not allowing your employer to actually derive some value greater than what you're earning, there's not a viable business to continue your employment. And so I've long advocated for creating value in excess of cost. And knowing the numbers, I can try to figure out pretty quickly whether someone is, in fact, meeting that expectation.
Outside of just a sales role, too.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give you a great example. When we opened Emagine Royal Oak, we added a lot of moving parts. We had a banquet center, a full-service restaurant. We had 16 lanes of bowling. We're down to 4 lanes of bowling there today. And the business was floundering. It was not doing well. Of course, I'm ultimately responsible for this. But I went to our then vice president of operations and said, this building is not performing.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? And he looked at me and said, no one could run this business.
Oops.
Yeah.
That was the wrong thing to say to you.
That was the wrong thing to say to me because candidly at that point, I thought, well, there's the MGM Casino in downtown Detroit that seems to be somewhat of a larger operation than what we're running here in Royal Oak. And if the gentleman who's tasked with running it isn't up to it, well, maybe there's someone who is. And so, yeah, telling me that no one could run a particular business didn't resonate very favorably with me.
Well, the only thing never to do is speak in absolutes. I've learned.
Yes, that's right. Because the world's shades of gray, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and when if somebody gives me that glimpse into their vision of the world or their vision of the problem, there's always a solution to a problem. Might not be the answer that we want, but to say that no one could do that, you're looking right into his soul, right? Because he's essentially saying, I can't do it. Nobody can do it. Just live with it. And that's not the answer.
And, I've always been responsible to investors, and I've been responsible to meet bank covenants. And so telling me I can't or I won't just never sat well with me. In fact, one of my favorite stories goes back to when we opened Emagine Novi and subsequently Emagine Canton, and we didn't have access to all the feature films because my competitor had a means of actually precluding us from accessing the films. And this is where I also have the adage, the worst thing in life is when you don't know what you don't know. Well, little did I know that my competitor could stand in my way of my film buying. And I had a film buyer at the time, very fine young man. I still adore him. His name is Steve. And Steve looked at me and said, there's nothing you can do about it. And to which I said, well, you may be right. And by the way, it was reasonably bleak because there weren't a lot of independent exhibitors who could overcome this particular problem. But I said, I've been entrusted with the hard-earned capital of my investors, and we'll never achieve our financial goals if we don't fix this film buying problem. And so, lo and behold, I had to get a new film buyer. I had to play a little good cop, bad cop, and there's a story in and of itself right there. But we ultimately overcame this problem, and that's when our financial performance took off. Wow. And without having resolved that issue, I can tell you that no one else would have ever contributed capital to the business. And, of course, my former partner told me after we'd built 3 theaters that we might as well just F the investors. We're probably not going to do any more deals with them anyway. And that's when I decided he had to go.
Interesting.
Because, again, they entrusted their capital to me. I raised all the money. And so I'm not going to be the one who goes to them and says, we're not going to do any more deals. So it doesn't really matter if you get paid or not.
Right. We're never going to see these. We're never going to see these people again.
And Who cares? And think of the irony. That was when we had 3 theaters.
Yeah.
And today I'm responsible for 16. So apparently Carl was wrong.
Wow. Interesting. It's funny when you brought up the investors, I actually had a note that I wanted to make sure that we talked about this because we've spent so much personal time together. I know how you talk on a camera. I know how you talk off a camera, on a stage, off a stage, and behind the closed doors. And it's always the same, which is a wonderful thing, right? Is your consistency. And I think that's something that people look for and why people appreciate your mentorship, your friendship, and to work for you too.
Well, I think people want honesty. I don't think they want to be told tales. I think I owe transparency to my investors. I owe responsibility to my investors. I'm a big believer that we all have to have a boss. I used to work for a gentleman who didn't believe he had a boss. Well, I've got a board of managers at Emagine these days, and I report to them. Realistically, they could fire me. They'd have a hard time firing me.
Hopefully they don't try.
But I'm a big believer that when you take on responsibility, you have to fulfill that responsibility.
Well, and what my point is, and too, in bringing that up, is that you're always talking about somebody other than yourself. You're talking about your guests. You're talking about your investors. And so, any time I've ever brought something up to you, or your teammates, right, who helped make this all happen as well, it's never, well, I want this. I never hear that type of talk coming from you. And the magic of that I continue to see is that when you take that outward focus, all the other things come to you eventually, right? Whether you're even trying for them or not. Sometimes I laugh when I'm thinking about some of our conversations, is this guy's all into the numbers, but I don't ever think he's really thinking about the money, right?
No, that comes naturally.
You're thinking about the responsibility to the stakeholders, and then the good stuff comes as a byproduct almost.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that all success in business is born out of serving one's customer, in our case, guest, and that the returns will flow from that. And so we've been very fortunate that we've had an intense focus, and we maintain an intense focus on our guest experience. So for example, this year we're spending $1.5 million just refurbishing chairs. Why? Because it is the most guest-facing thing you could imagine, because everybody's going to sit in one, right? And so those chairs have to be maintained. They can't be ratty, and the vinyl can't be worn out, and the mechanisms have to work. And so what are we doing? We're going through the entire fleet of thousands of chairs and making sure that each and every one of them is in top condition. Why? Because again, that's what guests expect. I mean, we live in this hyper-competitive world. And if we're not giving our guests a great experience, I know competitors who might be pleased to do so.
Sure. I used to work on boats when I was younger, and there was certain people, that they took care of that boat like better than their children, right? Meticulous on every little piece. And then there was other people who the last thing they did to that boat was bought it, right? They didn't do anything to it. And how that boat could last, that investment could last. You could see a 20-year-old boat that looks like it rolled off the showroom floor. You could see a 2-year-old boat that looks like and smells like and feels like like I don't want to be on this thing.
Yeah, I'm into meticulously maintaining things. And it even goes so far as my front lawn, my back lawn. I've got this, what most people would say, a beautiful lawn at my home. And I'm in the process of spraying with Roundup because it's got some invasive species in it.
Oh, geez.
And I want to get rid of the invasive species. So we've got to kill the grass first, and then we'll put in all new sod.
Start all over.
But it's because I paid a lot of money for this house. Now, it's a good lifestyle decision. We love it, where we live and so forth.
Sure.
But I want to maintain it impeccably. I want it to be pristine, and I want my business to be that way too.
You even hired sheep, I think, at one point in time to graze on the side of your
goats.
Goats, okay,
that's right.
You couldn't cut the lawn on the
hill, right? But the goats did really well. Yeah,
maybe they brought in the invasive.
It's possible.
Your calm and your resolve, I would say, has led to some interesting thinking, even in tough times, right? In the COVID time, you kind of pushed all the chips in the middle of the table, whereas not everybody was willing to do that. Can you talk about that the confidence that you had to push the chips in?
Well, I was asked about this the other day, and here's how I explained it. I was already all in. At the time, I was personally guaranteeing $55 million worth of debt. And so you either believed the industry was coming back, in which case you might as well grow now because there are no buyers to compete with you for those venues, or you think you're going bankrupt. Well, if you're essentially throwing up your hands, if you're curling up in the fetal position, you're giving up. Well, go ahead. But I wasn't ready to do that, particularly at that stage of my life. And so I believed that the industry would come back. I think we saw it this past weekend. I shared with you off camera that we had the second highest attendance day in the history of our company.
So for those, because this won't post for maybe for a week or two.
Yeah, Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend 2025. And
second highest attendance day in the history of the company. The first was November of 24 when Wicked came out.
Okay.
And so, and the other thing that most people generally wouldn't necessarily know, but we're going to have our third consecutive year record earnings at Emagine this year. And again, it's rooted in an intense focus on serving our guests. And if we serve our guests well, they will reward us with their continued patronage, and the returns will come from the invested capital.
And where are you seeing? Is the profile of a guest changing? Is it staying the same? What does it look like, and what are they consuming?
Young people are still our prime demographic, but I'm always happy to see films like Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise's other genre, Top Gun, because I want films that appeal to every demographic. And that's really the single best thing can happen to us, is have films that appeal to a wide swath of demographics. And that was true Memorial Day weekend, because we had Lilo and Stitch, which is a kids film, appeals to kids, and grandparents and parents who bring their children. And then we had Mission Impossible, which would skew to an older demographic. So when you've got 9, 10, up to 18 screens, you need lots of different product that appeals to different demographics. And so I think while the frequency is down in terms of moviegoing compared to where it was pre-COVID, we've garnered more market share from those who have paid less attention to their guest experience.
I was smiling there for half a second because I wanted to see Mission Impossible, and then you're telling me that it's geared towards an older crowd. So I guess I'm no longer the
sorry,
the
Matt.
younger crowd. Okay, thanks for that.
I'm just talking about an adult crowd.
I appreciate that. You had used a phrase though. At one point when we were talking, and you said, I have all this money already guaranteed. So if it all fails, do you remember what it was? Is around bankruptcy?
If you're going to go out with a bang, go out with a bigger bang.
Yeah.
And that was the premise. I mean, my banks absolutely hated it that I was expanding during COVID, and so we had to put those assets in a separate legal entity, and the parent company couldn't guarantee those indebtedness and those leases. But, ultimately they came around, and now those additional theaters contribute a third of our company's EBITDA. So the reason that we're having record profits is because we expanded when everybody else was back on their heels.
Yeah. And you can only go bankrupt once, right?
Correct. That was my premise.
Go out with a bang.
Go out with a bang. And what's the difference? Go out with a big bang or a small bang? It was going to be a bang either way. But again, I believed it would come back. I think that folks want to leave their home to be entertained. Now, can it be a mediocre experience and they come? No. It can't be. It's got to be a great experience.
Right. Yeah, because it has to be something that motivates the action of getting up off their couch, which just breaking that static is,
yes,
it has to have a pull.
Correct. And it always helps when Hollywood is dealing me a good hand.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece of your business, right? Is that you don't drive the content. I mean, except for those wonderful intros where you're on the screen.
Yeah, our policy trailers. Yeah, it's hard to get people to come out just for those alone and buy popcorn. But yeah, when Hollywood is a good partner, that's certainly when the sun shines for us.
Good. And how has that been as of late? Let's say over the last 3 years, the content that's coming out from them. Are you feeling like they're finding stride again?
Well, I think they're finding stride again, but I'll tell you, we thought that the low point after COVID and after the writers and actors work stoppage in 23 was going to be in Q1 of 24. And we told our lenders and so forth, this is going to be our worst quarter. And then lo and behold, it turns out that Q1 of 25 turns out to be even worse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was horrible. But guess what? April of 25 came along and it was well beyond expectations. And now on a year-to-date basis, we're at a plan.
Yeah, but if I would have asked you in early March, I would have
told you the lineup's terrible.
I know entrepreneurs aren't fearless, but they, we operate with a different level of management of the fear. Where does that all come back to, that kind of rooting in love? Like, I'm good enough, like none of this matters in some way. Like, where does it come from for you, do you think?
I think having a strong mind and having confidence, which is what my parents helped instill in me,
Yeah.
I think is integral to being successful as an entrepreneur, because you have to believe in order to overcome obstacles. And in the business, every business is in the business of solving problems, right? We're finding ways to better serve our customers or to solve a problem for them. And that's exactly what you do in your business. You solve problems for your clients.
That's right. Outsmart chaos, actually, with our.
That's right.
Our tagline.
Yes, and so I think that it requires a hardened mindset. Like, yeah, you're going to overcome stuff, and if I'm not, I'm going to die trying. Because I mean, it would have been real easy for me to say, "You're right. No one could break film clearance or allocation," which is what it was called back in 2002 when we opened Emagine Novi, and every small exhibitor in the country was being they were under the thumb of larger competitors, and it could have said, "Yeah, there's nothing we can do about this." Well, you better keep trying. Right. And maybe it's
because if you believe if there's nothing you can do, you're right.
Right. And then what? Then I'm going to go to my investors and go, yeah, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
That's nonsense. I wasn't prepared to do that. Sure. I'm not prepared to do that today.
How do you go through and evaluate, like, worst case scenarios? I mean, obviously I know what you said during COVID, but use even the example here of you couldn't get sold a film, right? Do you look through that and say, okay, hey, I'm going to look at, here's the worst that can happen, here's the best that can happen, and
if you can handle the worst case scenario, then you go forward and do the deal. Yeah, but those were challenging times, no question about it. To have no money coming in whatsoever and having most of your fixed costs continuing. Yeah, that was certainly a test. Honestly, and most people wouldn't realize this, but I never worked harder than I did during COVID.
Sure.
Just trying to save the business. And then we were trying to grow the business because we saw a great opportunity. If you believed, if you didn't believe in the business, then you might as well be out of it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. You have said, you've said a lot of things to me over the years that are very psychological in nature, right? I remember you telling me a story of somebody telling me that they were overwhelmed, and it just like, you kind of almost blew a gasket over this because of the mindset piece.
Yeah, I have no tolerance for that. Because if you believe you're overwhelmed, then indeed you are overwhelmed. So again, that gets to the strength of mind. You have to have a strong mind to be able to overcome challenges and problems. And again, business is all about problem solving. And so I'm not overwhelmed. I'm never overwhelmed. Because you know what? I won't allow myself to be overwhelmed. It's just nonsense.
Do you find that you operate within a certain tolerance? Because I would also argue that you don't get overly excited. You, like, when you did your deals on the additional theaters, you were happy, but it feels like maybe happy for a moment, and then back to business as usual, trying to climb the next mountain. Is that kind of how you operate in that tolerance? I don't get too crazy happy. I don't get too crazy overwhelmed or sad. I'm working. And I'm working in this range.
Well, I tell people that to be in my business, and particularly given what Hollywood does, I go through manic and depressive stages. Okay, but yeah, as a practical matter, I think it's remain calm, right? Remain calm and maintain an even keel. I try not to operate irrationally. And so I think to be rational, you have to maintain sort of an even keel. And I think folks that work with you value that, because I don't know that they want to be whipsawed around, or boss is having a bad day. That's not something that's you should perpetrate on other people.
Yeah, no, I think, when you think about, you go back to parenting, right? And you think about, we don't have that luxury as parents. You certainly could, you could exercise that luxury if you would like to, right? Of the high highs, low lows, and the kids never knowing what to expect. And that obviously doesn't prove out to be a good thing.
No, then you got to have schizophrenic children too. And so, yeah, I think that there is a perpetuation of what parents can do to children, and think about George and his family. I don't know if their children ever had their own children, but certainly, if you're not raised with love, how do you learn how to show love?
No, the generational trauma is a real thing.
Yes.
It's very hard to get out of it.
And it's a perpetuation in many cases, that it's perpetual. How do you get out of that circle, out of that swirling toilet?
Well, and like you said, you said your grandfather, your grandfather was a very loving person. I wonder if he had that same thing, or if he saw adversity and said, you know what, or saw the opposite of that and said, it stops here. I'm gonna change this. Right? Do you know generationally back?
Well, I can tell you this. My grandmother died in 1932 of pneumonia. This is before the advent of antibiotics. And so here's Mitar. He's got 9 children, and he's a single father. And the do-gooders back then felt like Mitar, a single guy, was not capable of raising 9 children. They wanted him to put his children up for adoption and to basically scatter them among different families. And Mitar loved his children, and he wanted to keep them together. And so that was adversity in and of itself. But he worked at the Ford Rouge steel mill. His entire career, once he came to Detroit, this is after being a coal miner, and he did everything immigrants were known to do back then, hard physical labor. But yeah, he faced a lot of adversity, being laid off during the Depression with 9 children. Lost his wife.
No security at that time.
No, there was no government safety net whatsoever in the 1930s. Yeah, they lived, through the kindness of their church and philanthropic gifts and so forth.
Wow.
Yeah, there was no safety net back then.
Well, so resolve is in your DNA.
Well, certainly on my mom's side, that's for sure. And and I think resolve is important in life.
Yeah. Huh. How have you handled over the years as the ebbs and flows or the growth of Emagine, just grappling with the some of the people that you started with are some of the people you still continue with, but others, some of the people that got you to a certain point weren't the people to get you to the next point. I know I don't know how many years ago, but you had brought in a CEO. Talk about the evolution of people in the organization and how you've created value for them and they've created value for you, whether they've stayed or whether they've went on to other things.
Yeah, some of the people that were leaders of the business early on are no longer with us because, as you point out, sometimes the folks that get you to a certain point are not those who are well suited to take you to the next level. And one of them was the gentleman who told me no one could run Royal Oak. Okay, well, you basically just shared with me that you're not up to it. And by the way, I'm a big believer that when you let somebody go, you have to do so with allowing them to maintain with grace and dignity. I think that, that's critically important. I don't think you should allow folks to begrudge their time with you or feel like they were mistreated. In fact, I even was sharing with one of my old accounting professors the other day that we'd let a young man go, and he'd been with us for about 15 years. He started as an assistant manager in Novi, and we let him go just before COVID. And I didn't think, honestly, the folks that allowed him to move on had really fulfilled my expectation in that regard. They hadn't been particularly sensitive to Gary's years of contribution. And so I didn't have the economic means, but earlier this year, I wrote Gary a thank you letter, and I enclosed a check for $10,000. And not as taxable income. Just, Gary, I never got an opportunity to properly thank you for your contributions to Emagine. And I just felt like, maybe better late than never. And I had to make it right with him.
That's amazing.
Well, I couldn't do it for a long time because, things were still tight up until recently. But it was just the right thing to do because Gary had given us a lot of good years. And I thought it was the least I could do would be to, express my gratitude to him for his years of service.
How long was that eating you up, or that was on your mind?
5 years.
5 years. Great. Wow. There, you said the times were tight for a while, obviously, but there were also, you kind of kept things very humble. I mean, no one would know the humility side because they see the high-end guest experience, right? So you see the reclining chairs, you see the higher-end food, you see the things that make Emagine, but you didn't have a corporate office for quite some time. I don't remember what was the sales figures that you had scaled to before you even had offices.
Yeah, we probably had 7 or 8 theaters before we had a corporate office. Our controller for many years, Jill, worked out of her library at home. And honestly, I remain a big believer in holding down corporate overhead because efficient businesses have a greater chance of succeeding in the long run. And so I've always wanted to maintain tight cost controls. In fact, even recently, we revamped our compensation plan for our general managers and assistant managers with the goal of trying to align their economic interests with that of the owners. And so a big portion of our general manager's compensation now and our corporate office team and so forth is predicated upon the performance of the business. Because again, I want everyone's economic interests aligned. And I want our general managers and their assistant managers to think like owners. They have to think about the interaction they're having with guests. I say that to be a good Emagine teammate, you have to put yourself in the place of the guest. And how would you want to be treated if you were on the other side of that counter? And so I want that to be in the forefront of their mind. I want every day, every moment, I want them to think about how would I want to be treated?
Sure.
And so I think by giving them a direct economic incentive in the performance of the company overall, and they're building more specifically, they get to operate like entrepreneurs. And I want them to think like entrepreneurs. I want them to think like me.
Sure.
I want to clone myself.
It's the only way you scale, right? If you can get the, a piece of the culture that you've instilled in all of those people, in all these different states and all these different theaters, it's the only way to truly scale with that, with some level of same mindset together.
I've been hearing a lot lately about the knock. When an employee knocks on your office door and says, "Got a minute?" and you immediately know it's some sort of IT incident. But Auxiom IT can help. Whether you're having a problem, need consulting, an upgrade, or a managed IT approach, they focus on preventing cyber attacks and proactive solutions that deliver results. My friend Matt Loria and everyone at Auxiom are ready to help before or after you get the knock. Visit Auxiom.com and let Auxiom IT help you outsmart chaos.
Yes, I strongly believe that. And so the alignment of interest economic plan or compensation plan is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I don't mind telling you, we have increased the compensation for our GMs and assistant general managers and supervisors pretty markedly with the idea of retaining the talent. We want to keep our best people. And I want those folks, if the store is successful, I want them to benefit economically from running a successful store.
Sure. What are some of the levers that a store a general manager of an individual location can pull? How do they drive it different? Because you have these factors of, you in some ways you're only as good as the product that Hollywood puts out.
Yep.
But once you get the person in the house, right? Or is there a way that those people can actually bring more people into the house? Like what are the
Well,
levers
I
that
think
we-
if you run a really nice, clean theater, I think more, word will get out and people go, yeah, I want to go there because that's a great theater. And they treat me well when I go there. But I'll give you a good example. A lot of the success in running one of our theaters is to lose less money when it's slow. So that means that you have to carefully manage your labor cost, your labor deployment, the number of people who are literally working at any one point in time. And the point is that what you want to do is you want to have exactly the right number of people in positions to give guests great customer service, but you don't want them standing around. So if I've got 5 extra 16-year-olds standing around talking to each other or playing with their phones, that's going to cost us money. And so labor cost control is one of the factors, but we're not so foolish as to say labor cost is the only factor. One of the major factors is customer feedback. So we do surveys and we talk to our guests and we want to know how do they rate the theater. And if they get poor ratings, that can really ruin your bonus. So the answer is you got to choose the right amount of labor at the right time, and you've got to make sure your guests are happy, because if guests aren't happy, then it doesn't matter what you're doing otherwise. And I learned, of course, you learn all these things the hard way. So, for example, Emagine Canton is in a great location. It's always been a very successful theater. And for the longest time, I thought it was the GM. It was mostly the market in that case, because looking back on those early days.
Yeah, it's a growth area.
Yeah.
It just, it blossomed at the right time.
But now it's predicated on growing attendance. It's predicated on EBITDA production. And one of the things we did, for example, is we had to equate the EBITDA of owned theaters to leased theaters, because, of course, you have more operating expense, when you have leased theaters. And so we have a term called EBITDAR. It's EBITDA before rent.
Oh, okay.
And that way you can equate theaters that are leased versus owned. And so everybody's being judged on an even playing field.
Love it. Where did that come up through some arguments, where theater GMs were saying, hey, this isn't fair? Or did you recognize that? How did you recognize that?
No, I was, I'd learned this at Procter. Tom Procter came to me at one point in time and said, I want you to help me develop an executive compensation plan. And I looked back at him and said, I'll gladly do that. But what I want to do, Tom, is I want to have a bonus plan that where we're all swimming in the same direction. We're all rowing in the same direction. And probably one of my most proud moments with Tom was that he said to me, I never started making any money until I started sharing with others.
I remember you telling me that.
And so we grew our profits dramatically once we got out of little siloed bonus plans, and everybody knew the goal was to make more money. We're all rowing in the same direction, and it proved to be the basis upon which we sold the company for a lot of money. And I had the privilege of being a minority shareholder when we sold. But I'd learned that at Procter. If you can get everybody rowing in the same direction, it's very powerful. And so I just simply adapted that from my Procter days and said, we have to make sure that the economic interests are all aligned. And honestly, I want it down to the concessionaire or the box office attendant. And so what we've done is we've created discretionary bonus pools now for the GM to sprinkle additional cash on his or her lieutenants. With the idea being, you're running the building, you've got this pool of money, now you give it to the people that have earned it and have helped propel your success.
And isn't it interesting too that based on the incentivization, right, and then the shared mindset, I've even seen people, their behaviors and their way that they can talk to people actually changes, right? When you're thinking about the fact that let's say somebody's walking up to buy popcorn, right? And they may not know about the premium types of popcorn that you have, which I don't know if they make more margin or not, but
it's all marginal sales. Good.
So that being the case, then, there's a right way and a wrong way to ask if you can interest the person in the next level up, right? Because there's one way that sounds, manipulative, right, or contrived. And then there's another way that is way more smooth, right? And so you start to incentivize the behavior that actually works, and then that starts to catch on like wildfire.
Well, and we have contests for cotton candy sales and real butter sales and things of that nature. And so we have some good-natured competition between our locations, and we handicap it based on attendance.
Okay.
So Lake Geneva, which is a relatively small theater, is handicapped against Canton, which is a high-volume theater,
Sure.
for example. But yeah, I would tell you with all due respect, I don't know that we have that down pat.
Right.
But it is a critical element. And, the job of our general manager is a field general. I want them looking, observing, and talking to guests. I don't want them hiding in the office, okay? They don't need to be looking at the internet while they're at the office. And one of the things that Anthony accomplished, which was really of great value to us, was that while during his leadership tenure, we greatly reduced the amount of work that the general managers have to do in the back office. We've, and that's the job of our corporate office, is to ensure the success of our GMs and their teams by reducing burden on them so they can spend more time being guest facing, talking to guests, interacting with them. And I'm bringing something back right now that I started a while back, and I'm very fond of it. And that is, I want to the extent possible, personalize the business. That's why I'm the face of the business. Okay. But moreover, there was a time I could discern that we were doing relatively worse with children's films compared to films that would skew toward adults. And it occurred to me that folks think of Emagine for date night. Like, yeah, we're going to go, I'm going to take my wife or my girlfriend out for Friday night, Saturday night date. But when it came to the kids, I don't know why, but maybe they would go to a competing theater. And so I could see that if you looked at our relative performance on G and PG-13, it wasn't good. So one of the things I want to bring back, and we sort of lost it for a while, but we're going to bring it back, is I want to offer a small gift to children when they come with their family. So if we're showing a G-rated or PG-rated film, I want a general manager, an assistant manager, or a supervisor to stand at the doorway of the auditorium as the guests are departing, and we're going to give the child a small token of appreciation. It might be a toy, some kind of a candy, but the purpose is not to give a gift. The purpose is for my general managers to interact and express their gratitude to the customer for bringing their family. And I think that that's a differentiating factor. The other thing I'm doing this week is that we found all the folks who spend an inordinate amount of money at Emagine, and I'm going to write them personal thank you letters this week.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, I guarantee you could go spend $1 million at AMC, and Adam Aaron is not going to send you a personal thank you note.
Did you purposefully, or I guess let me ask a different way. How did you become the face of Emagine with being in the trailers? Was that your idea to deliver that message in the it's called the trailer, the beginning?
Yeah, policy trailer
at the beginning. How did that idea come about? Because you really became also quite well known, especially in the Rochester area, but in others as well. I mean, I think somebody invited you to prom at one point in time or something, didn't they? Or homecoming?
Yes. I filmed a trailer one time for a young lady who wanted to ask her boyfriend to a prom. And so I did a special film for that. And so I've had a lot of fun like that. But to your question, I was in the lobby of one of our theaters. It might have been Novi or Canton, one of our big theaters. And I'm talking to a guest, and the guest obviously has no idea who I am. And they said something along the lines of, this place must be almost like some giant media conglomerate. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it's owned by Paul and about 20 investors. And I'm guaranteeing $7.5 million here. So so this is kind of my business. And I thought at that point in time, if we could personalize the business, folks might feel a little warmer connection.
Yep.
And it's challenging because ultimately, the way moviegoing has traditionally worked is that you'll decide what film you want to go see. Then you would look on the internet and figure out who's got it at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, whichever time is most convenient to you. And my goal was to just, at the margin, try to shave off a few guests who might say, well, why don't we just look at Emagine first? Because he seems like an okay guy.
Yeah.
And so personalizing the business came about, I want to say about 15 plus years ago now, but I think it was a very good move on our part.
And it was really inspired by that interaction with that person who you wanted to dispel the idea that this was just some nameless, faceless.
Yeah, some giant corporation owned Emagine. Oh, no, it's Paul and 20 of his best friends.
Yeah, right. That's great. Yeah, I mean, you think about it. Think about how our own behavior is, right? If there's a restaurant that we go to, right, when we get together, and I would imagine if we had a bad experience one time, we both like the owner, right? She's a nice lady.
Yep. We'd
probably go, oh yeah, she made a bad hire, right? We wouldn't blame it on the whole place, and we're never coming here ever again. We'd think about our relationship with that person, give her some grace to go, we all make a bad hire here and there, right? Or somebody had a bad day. We'd let that go. We let that go when we have the relationship.
Yeah, and folks find me, even though I have no social media presence on purpose anymore, as you know. People know how to find me, and they do. And if they have a bad experience, I want them to tell me.
You bet.
Because my job is to make it right. And I
can't fix. It goes back to I don't know what I don't know. I have to know that.
Yes, exactly. And but at the end of the day, if you've had a bad experience, and this is what I'll tell you, I think is critically important. If you've had a bad experience, it's because I put the wrong people in place. If you've had a good experience, it's because those folks served you well. And it gets back to responsibility. I am responsible. I'm responsible ultimately for every guest experience. I'm responsible for ultimately everything, right?
You bet.
And I accept that responsibility willingly. And if a guest writes to me or calls me and says, I was mistreated, I had a bad experience, my job is to make it right. And I can't fix what's transpired, but I can certainly try to make it right.
Correct.
And if it entails giving them their money back or giving them money back plus passes, plus popcorn, whatever it takes, I want them to feel like they were treated fairly.
Yeah. Because they're gonna spread that word, positive or negative, and more often than not, they spread the negative more than the positive.
Yeah, negative spreads faster than
you have to squash that flame.
Right.
You had told me many times about running an efficient business, and then that gives you the ability to be able to move, stick and move when the time's right. The old Warren Buffett, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. But being efficient yourself and having some money in the coffers is definitely part of your playbook.
Yeah, I mean we've always managed the business as effectively as we can, and I'm a big believer that you have to have adequate working capital because cash is the lifeblood of business.
Yep.
And we were fortunate; we weren't overly leveraged when we went into COVID. We're not overly leveraged today, thankfully. But leverage is great as long as you got positive cash flow greater than your debt service.
Sure.
Well, it's a real problem when it goes the other way.
But you've also shared with me leveraging technology for those efficiencies, and sometimes those technologies, they can look opulent, right? But so like you've leveraged technologies on the side of bigger screens, better sound, things like that, which don't necessarily drive efficiency per se. But have you leveraged any other technologies for efficiency, or are you looking at those for efficiencies?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not looking every day, you're making a mistake, in my opinion. You have to constantly look for innovations and opportunities to do things better, faster, cheaper. And so, yeah, I mean, one of the things that goes on today, Matt, is that more than half our ticket sales are online. So you don't need as many box office attendants because folks are doing self-serve ticketing, and they like it. And I'll tell you another element of guest experience that I think has really changed and improved over time is one's ability to choose their own seat in advance. Because honestly, I think that has done more to enhance the guest experience than almost anything else. And here's why. You can arrive early and relax, and stop at the bar, the concession stand,
Mhm.
or you can get there after the trailers and you know your seat is still there.
Mhm.
So the whole idea behind moviegoing, in my opinion, is it's a couple hours of escapism.
Mhm.
I want you to arrive in an unhurried fashion. I want you to relax. I want you to enjoy that escapism. And so if you can do so, knowing your seat where you bought it is preserved for you,
Mhm.
then it's a lot easier to have an easy night out.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure is. I mean, I'm even thinking of, if we show up at 5 minutes till the show starting, we still have time to go into line because we know we've got a spot. We've got a spot for all of the family
Yes.
to sit together too, right? It's not like, oh, we're rushing in and we'll pepper us all around, to wherever there's an empty seat.
And, we've tried to make that, put an exclamation point on that. And here's why. So, for example, if you order a pizza or some nachos, something we need to make in the oven, for example,
Mhm.
we'll deliver it right to your chair
Yeah.
because we know where you're sitting.
Yeah.
And I think that's an element of service that's just, why not?
Yeah. Right.
I've got young people who would otherwise perhaps be standing around.
Right.
They've
It's
got,
almost a no cost for you. I mean, because you have the labor there,
yes,
right? Because the person collecting your ticket isn't maybe if there's not another show that they're taking tickets at or checking phones at, they have downtime
yes,
or redeployable time.
right. And so we've used a lot of technology in the back shop of scheduling labor and and ordering proper par quantities for food and so forth to know how many popcorn tubs you need on Memorial Day weekend, right?
Mhm.
The last thing you want to do is run out of popcorn. By the same token, you don't want to have popcorn going rancid because you've had overabundance of it.
Sure.
And so we've used a lot of technology to help manage our costs and to manage our inventory.
Do you see the automation piece coming in? Like I know we've seen restaurants where there's a robot flipping a fryer and things like that. Do you see any of that
I think in the future we will look at things like automated fryers and so forth because it knows when to lift up the basket, right?
Mhm.
You're not relying on humans to time the amount of, it's in the oil.
Sure.
And so I could see us using automation in the kitchen operation itself. But I think another differentiating factor for us is we do display cooking. Meaning that we want, even though we're not selling what I consider gourmet food, it's high-end bar food,
Mhm.
but I want folks to know that it's the highest quality. And so one of the things we did along the way was that we saw Blaze Pizza, where you pick your own toppings and it's being made right in front of you. And I thought we should do that in our theaters. And in fact, all of our theaters now have a brick oven and we make nachos and we make pizza in there. But it's freshly made. There's no frozen pizzas in Emagine.
Mhm.
We you pick your toppings and we'll deliver right to your chair. I think these are just it's 1,000 details in our business,
Mhm.
and we're not going to hit on all 1,100%. But if we can make it just incrementally better
Mhm.
than the guy down the street,
Mhm.
then I think there'll continue to be a role for us in the chain of commerce.
It's a better and better every day sort of theory, and like you said, doing 1,000 things right, and doing just that much better than the other guy is what gets you ahead.
There's no resting on your laurels in business.
Correct.
Every day is a new day.
And there's always somebody,
Somebody wants your cheese.
yep, somebody younger, hungrier, whatever, wants to come up and eat your lunch. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And that's the guy raising canes.
yeah.
He doesn't want a franchise because he wants to control every aspect of, and I greatly admire him
Mm-hmm.
because he's doing a great job because he cares.
Yeah. That's right.
You got to care. That's the number one characteristic. You got to care.
I would agree with that 100%. 100%. Thinking about legacy, thinking about what's next for you. I know you're not looking to retire. It doesn't seem to be one of those things that's in one of the life moves that's in your cards. What's still driving you, and what do you want to do next? What do you think?
Well, I think I've shared with you, I want to be productive till the day I die.
Mm-hmm.
I want to contribute value greater than my cost.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a drag on society. I want to continue to produce value. And whether it's Emagine or some other business in the future, I'd like to have my sons involved in business at some point in time too. Neither one of them is involved in the business today, But I think that's an opportunity for me in the future. I'm also very happy to play a role of senior advisor to young people and to be a mentor. I've got several mentees, and I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I was practicing public accounting, I had a automotive repair facility as a client in Roseville, and had been out of that business for a lot of years, but I got reconnected with their son, Joe, who I knew Joe when he was a little kid.
Yeah.
And Joe nominated me for an award at the DAC, and I had the privilege of speaking to the members there. And so I got reconnected to Joe, who had purchased his dad's business.
Okay.
Joe knows more about the business side of automotive repair than probably anyone on earth. He's really a bright young man.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just had the time of my life helping Joe grow his business. And what I've done for him, and I think he would admit this, is that I've helped him develop business plans, cash flow projections, and so he's grown his business from one location to 4 now.
Wow.
And the sky's the limit for Joe, because it's formulatic. He knows the operation side of the business.
Yep.
And I understand debt service coverage, and I understand how to put together a loan proposal. I understand collateral. And so we work on things like he's expanding his facility in Sterling Heights right now. He bought that one several years ago. Now he's going to build onto it and service trucks as well as automotives.
And
automobiles, rather.
What's the name of the company? Can we say?
Yeah, it's called Gordy's Tire and Auto and What's Gordy's Auto and Tire?
Okay.
Or Tire and Auto. It's what But
so
it's
we'll give
Gordy.
Gordy is plug to that. For anybody, Anybody who needs
Joe Hansen. And it's paying homage to his father. His father is Gordy Hansen.
Okay.
And it was called Gordy's Garage.
Okay.
And so now Joe is in the business of doing automotive repair and selling tires, and so it's Gordy's Tire and Auto.
Fantastic.
And great young guy. And I got to tell you, if you need your car fixed, this is a plug for Joe and his business. He's the guy. He'll treat you fairly. And he's got the Midas touch when it comes to the business side of it.
Yeah.
Like he goes and buys an automotive repair facility, and in the first year grows the revenue by 25%.
Wow.
Yeah, and
he cares, obviously.
Oh, he obviously cares. And so what's fun for me as an old man is I get to play mentor to a bright young guy who really knows his business, and I know a little bit about finance.
Yeah. Yeah. And not everything, and what you're teaching him is the stuff that's not we don't learn that in school. You learn it from scrapes and scars and bruises, and so having that come from you is really important.
Yeah, one of the best things that ever happened to me when I graduated from college is I worked both in banking and public accounting, and so I learned how I was exposed to a broad array of businesses, and I learned how to read a financial statements before I could put them together, and understood what they meant. And so, being able to put together a loan package and to be able to demonstrate to a prospective lender that you've got the means to repay the loan over time and so forth. Those are skills that are not necessarily present in small and medium-sized businesses.
Yeah, I would agree. For sure. And I don't think not everyone has that person too, in their quiver, that can say, "Oh, I've got my Paul Glantz I can call and ask for some assistance here."
Yeah, and Joe has other mentors as well, but I've just gotten the biggest kick out of being of some value to Joe.
That's great. Well, I'm sure he appreciates it. Couple last things I want to ask you. You had given me a piece of advice. So I'm going to ask you for your mentees, some best pieces of advice you've given them. You've given me a lot of different pieces of advice over the years, but one was I had called you regarding an investment opportunity at one point in time, and you said, "Matt, put your head down, focus on your business. I promise that as success comes to you, investment opportunities will continue to come to you just at a fine rate."
Yeah, in my personal case, I've had very mixed results with investing in outside businesses. By far, Imagine's my best investment. And some of, and at the end of the day, what we're always doing is we're betting on people, right? We're relying on people to help propel our own business, or we're relying on people to shepherd our investments and so forth. And it's a mixed bag. nobody's batting 1,000. And so I think concentrating on growing your business and making it as optimally successful is probably the best way to concentrate and grow your wealth at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. What about best piece of advice to another mentee that you've maybe given some advice to lately?
Well, let's think about it. Well, I'd like to get away from banks. And there's huge growth in non-bank lending these days.
Yeah.
So a lot of businesses find that there's success in paying a little bit more in the form of interest,
Mm-hmm.
but get much better loan terms and so forth. And that type of flexible capital is largely available because non-bank lenders are not nearly as highly regulated as banks are.
Sure.
I almost feel sorry for my bankers. It's so formulaic these days. All the discretion's been taken out of lending.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame because back when I was in banking and my early days of banking, all that's gone now. And I'll give you a story. Like, for example, when we did our first new build theater, it opened on May 23, 1997. It was called Cinema Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't do well initially. It opened very slowly. In fact, I would even tell you that 1,200 people gave up their lives so we could survive financially, because there was a little film called Titanic that came out in December of 97 that
Saved the day.
Saved the day.
Bacon.
Saved my bacon.
Wow.
But back then we were relying on, angel capital, an SBA loan, a bank loan. And so the bank had made us a construction loan and we weren't hitting our projections. And so the SBA, which was supposed to come in and take out a bunch of the bank debt, they said, well, you're not hitting your projections. We're not going to fund. And the bank said, well, startup business, we think it'll come around. So we're just going to let you go to interest only for a year, and then we'll see how it goes. Well, within 4 or 5 months, we were able to actually get the SBA to fund. But if today, if the bank were to say to me, we're going to give you more favorable loan terms without a major concession, meaning like a big principal pay down or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
they have to write the loan down to zero. And it's basically, it's born out of the 2008, 2009 time period when apparently banks would adjust loan terms to keep loans from going into default.
Yep.
But it was a matter of discretion. The bank could do it, and they didn't have to put it in the non-accrual column because we were paying interest. But so I couldn't start my business today and run into those kind of problems, because the banks just don't have any latitude. They would say, we have no choice. We have to write your loan off. In fact, at one point, Emagine Royal Oak was in the workout department of the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of ironic because I didn't even know at that point in time what had transpired. And it's like, hey, we made every loan payment on time. Yeah, the covenants are kind of tight, but we've never missed a payment.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, you're not hitting your covenants, so you're in default. And it's like, well, how do we get out of purgatory? And it was like, we need to pay down the loan. Well, we had a couple $1 million in cash. And we paid down the loan. Oh, now we're okay. But the bank didn't tell me that. If they told me that, I would have been out of the workout department a year earlier.
Right. Right. Which just cost them money to bring in the workout.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what were they going to do anyway? They're going to take it back. You think you can run it better than I can? Go ahead.
Sure. Sure. And was that all because of regulation?
Yeah,
Or
regulations.
just bureaucracy?
Well, in some cases, bureaucracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the piece of advice is look for alternative methods of
I think it's
capitalization.
be creative with your financing and don't be undercapitalized, whatever you do, because cash is the lifeblood of business. No matter what you think something's going to cost, it's going to cost more,
Mhm.
and it's going to take longer than you think it is to get to where you want to be. And so make sure you've got cushion in your projections. That would be the advice I would give young people starting out in business.
Yeah. We had a speaker in the Vistage group that was the largest franchisee of Krispy Kreme donuts in California for quite some time, and that was his biggest piece of advice. He said, if you remember nothing, it's if you're going to ask for money, ask for more than you think.
Yeah,
because it will take twice as long, or it will not twice. It will take longer. It will take longer, and it will cost more than you ever expected. with your initial projections.
That's absolutely true. That's no truer words were ever spoken.
Yeah.
It's always going to take longer and cost more than you think it will.
And if you've ever built a house, you know that for sure.
I made that mistake once, once only. Not going to do that again.
What's two questions for you. So and then we can wrap it up. What is a bold move that you wish you had made sooner?
To quit Procter.
Oh, to have actually left before you had.
Yeah, I think if I had concentrated all my efforts on Emagine, I think it would be bigger today than it is.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, that was not what I was expecting.
But I don't live with regrets. You know, I think we should all live without regrets, and I do. I have no regrets. But I think if you said with the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently? It would have been, maybe I'll just concentrate all my efforts on this entrepreneurial business.
Yeah. Wow. And then, actually, you know what? You already answered this one. I said, what's giving you energy now? And that's helping grow younger leaders.
Yeah. I think I get the biggest kick out of that.
I love it. Well, I think you're giving back in excess of the cost of yourself.
Well, thank you. I'm trying every day, right? Every day we got to produce value greater than our cost.
Love it. Well, this has been awesome. I think we've all learned a lot from you, and I think we're all going to continue to learn a lot from you. So thanks for being here, and thanks for doing an episode of the podcast.
Pleasure to be with you.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
This episode of the BLTnT Podcast